Happy Tuesday. I'm a bit early, but I am going to give people time to hop on. This is our final episode in What's the Prayer Sis? It is 6 o'clock Central Time. And I'm going to give y'all some time to hop on here. Traffic has not been so bad because school has been out. Hey, Ashley, I am going to add you shortly. I'll give a little briefing of the series, and I guess I'll do that while I allow people to get in. So the first three episodes of the What's the Prayer Sis started at the beginning of the month, and it's been really good. We've been having a lot of conversation inside, the series, the live series, and even outside it continued. So I am excited that I've been able to have that interaction with everybody. Let me go ahead and try to join you in, Ashley. Let me know. Hey.
Hey, how are you?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good. I'll go ahead and finish. So the first week of the month, we had a relationship coach, Allison, along with Allison, and she gave us some good nuggets to help singles identify, who they are and find the person that they deserve. And then on the second episode, we had Brittany, also known as her Instagram handle, Beasting, and she gave a rundown about manifestation and how she was able to manifest the love that she currently has and also the life that she has. And then last week we met with Taji at Crimson Throne or Forever Ruby. I think that's the name. I'm sorry. I'll tag it when I do the play. Sorry. And she gave us also some good little jewels and nuggets of how she was able to launch a program called Date You Boo, and she just put those things together, and her program was surrounded around the Proverbs woman. And I think that it was definitely great conversation. So now this week we have Dr. Ashlei N, and it is really I'm really excited. You actually are the only single that we've had on the panel, so I'm really excited to hear from you, from your perspective. And she's also given us a spiritual perspective, and so we'll have a good little conversation. So Ashlei, how about you go ahead and share just a little brief bio of who you are, what you're about, and all of that good jazz.
All right. So I'm Dr. Ashlei N, and I am first, a server of the Lord. So I love to serve God in the church, outside the church, and education is my background in terms of working in the marketplace. And so I've taught, I worked in administration, even had the opportunity to work overseas. And so that was great. I also do Christian spiritual and interpersonal coaching as well as educational consulting. And so I stay busy. I'm also an author. I've written one book about my testimony to help women overcome their own challenges in life. And now I've written another book for singles.
Oh, cool. So we'll get to talk a little bit about that later. I'm interested to hear more about your book. For all of those who are joining, make sure you if you have any questions, you can go ahead and ask those questions in the question box. Thank you for joining. Definitely feel free to comment, ask questions. I like for things to be in, we like to integrate our followers into this, the sessions. And so don't feel shy or any of that. Like, definitely ask your questions. I like an interactive live. So if you have any questions for me or for Dr. Evans, make sure you just go ahead and ask. And if you know somebody that might benefit from this conversation, go ahead and tag them or share the live with your followers. So you've traveled a lot. Tell us a little bit about your traveling.
So I would say my first experience out the country was when I went on a mission trip to South Africa. And I had already been one of those people. I love the idea of being outside of the country, just seeing other people, different types of cultures, and being able to immerse myself just in a different environment. And so what I ended up doing after I got my doctorate, I actually went to the UAE to teach. And so while I was there, I was able to teach, and then I worked in head of curriculum, which gave me an opportunity to just immerse myself in the culture. And if you know anything about the UAE, there's a lot of people from a lot of different places. It's known for having expatriates there. And so it was just a great opportunity to connect with a variety of people. And being on that side of the world, you get the opportunity to visit other places. And so I went through Europe and had the opportunity to go to London, Amsterdam, France, Rome, and then a couple other places in Europe. So
cool. I love it. I also love to travel. And ironically, me and the second guest actually met in South Africa. South Africa is really cool. I really enjoyed that.
yeah, nice.
Yeah. So you are an educator by trade and an author, and you've written 2 books. Tell us a little bit about what you know about being a Christian and being single.
One thing I will say is that there are different narratives that have been taught in regards to being Christian and single. I would definitely say for myself, it has been a journey, but I will acknowledge the fact that understanding myself spiritually as a Christian has helped me along my journey in singleness. And it didn't necessarily come from just the simple rules of, you don't have sex. There's more to it than just practicing abstinence. And so just really understanding purpose, who you are, understanding what God has called you to do, understanding the timing so you don't rush everything, being intentional with dating and not just saying yes to everybody just to say you went out with someone. But different things that just need to be clarified. I went out asking, and I have a mentor, and I talked to a lot of other singles. I talked to a lot of married couples, and the reality is people who have been married for years, sometimes they didn't experience singleness in this season because it is different for the different generations. And so what I try to do is just kind of glean and just ensure that I'm not living to be married, like making marriage an idol. I recognize that it is a part of the journey. And so it's not a matter of, if it doesn't happen, my whole life is over. That's not the case. The reality is it's not a destination. And I think a lot of times that narrative is not told. And so you have people, Christian singles, who are struggling. They're getting upset, they're getting agitated, they're getting frustrated, but they don't understand that when you're dealing with a whole different partner, that person has their journey to go on as well. And then you have to understand your purpose clearly, because not everyone is called to marriage. And so, you have to assess, okay, did God give me that desire, or do I just want it because someone else has it?
That's good. I agree. I've grown up in church my whole life, and there's a lot of different ideas of what it means to be single or to wait on the next person. And I think that having these conversations need to happen more than it has been in the church, and even just amongst people, and everybody's Christian walk is different. the way that they, carry themselves and, do different things. But I think the overall thing that I wanted to get across, even with these series, is like you mentioned in the beginning, finding your purpose. Like there's more to just not having sex before marriage, which is what's preached a lot, in the church, then, it's more than that. And so I am a strong advocate of, helping people identify what their purpose is, and, helping them understand who they are, so that when that person comes, if that is what they desire, then they will be ready to receive love, and not abuse it. So that's really good. Welcome everybody that has joined. Thank you for joining. If you feel like this is something that may resonate with someone else, please feel free to share or tag them in this post. For those of you who are new to the series, this series is really about, it came from the "What's the Prayer Sis" question that a lot of people commonly asked when Sierra found Russell, and everybody saw the love that she had, and where she came from and what she had then, and he was a certain type of guy that was very different than what she was used to, and so I know that a lot of times people ask that question, but they don't ask with the intentions of really needing to know like what it really took. And it's more than just what her prayer was, though it was recently released. And I thought that it was pretty cool. I think that it was for her. I think that it was for what she needed. But I think I want the message to get off that everybody needs to find out what their purpose is and who they are, and what God has for them, so that they're not so much, just trying to recite what somebody else did to get who they had, because, she prayed for who she needed to be, so that she can receive the person that she's getting. So welcome. Thank you guys for joining. We are with Dr. Ashlei Evans, and she is coming from a spiritual perspective. So in your opinion, Dr. Evans, what do you think the biggest misconception of Christian singles is?
Wow, the biggest misconception is that you don't have a life. I feel like sometimes in church, a lot of times Christian singles are boxed in as being, oh, you'll just help, serve. But they're not invested in at the same capacity as if, married couples, they push, they're like, we're fighting to keep you guys married. But the reality is you have single people who don't know who they are, who don't know their calling, and they're literally just functioning off of what other people are telling them to do and to be. Mm-hmm. And so the reality is there comes a time where you need singles to know who they are, like understanding what their gifts are, what has God called them to do? How can they reach that point? How can they complete these milestones in their life that God has for them? And how can they walk joyfully as a single and be happy, understanding that it's not a matter of having another individual, but first of all, you have Christ, and your joy is supposed to be with Christ. And if you're not joyful with him, well, then you're not going to be joyful with someone else. And so just understanding that there is something for you to do, and it's not dependent on another person.
That's good. That's really good. I was just thinking, like, as you were talking, I was like, I was a part of a group in my last church, a singles group, and there weren't any men. Like, it was just women. And I was like, why is it just like the focus is on women? Like, why can't we bring the men in? So shout out to all the men that's joined and that is a part of this live. I would definitely love to hear from you if you have any questions or any comments. Feel free to share. But yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. I think that when you learn who you are, you don't have to imitate what you're seeing, especially when you've been brought up a certain kind of way. I think a lot of times, old time church have really kind of put a sour taste in a lot of people's, mouth about Christianity and, how to live as a Christian and walk as a Christian. And I think that God had intentions for us to soar and to be so much more than what tradition or religion has like caused us to do. So the conversation is really good. So how about if you can share with us some pitfalls you as a Christian single experienced in your time, and how did you overcome them?
I would definitely say, one, pride, being prideful in my singleness, thinking that I could do everything out of my own capacity and not having boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that's probably my biggest pitfalls in the past, because when you don't have boundaries, you don't, there's not a way to ensure that you are in a covering space.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you don't have the boundaries, you go out, you do everything, you try everything, and you have to try to figure out everything,
Mm-hmm.
when in actuality you didn't have to go through that. And so a lot of times, what I found for myself was that I needed to understand having boundaries in my life. I needed to understand walking in humility, understanding that I can't operate as a healthy single without the support of God, first of all. And then understanding the importance of community. I think sometimes people like to hide certain things when it comes to this area of their life.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, if you do date someone, you don't have boundaries, and you slip up and you fornicate, it's like sometimes people will hide that. Mm-hmm. And they won't open up, and they'll just act like, oh, my life is over, and they can't move forward. But the reality is, it's an opportunity to connect with people who can help guide you back into that place of living as a healthy Christian single. Mm-hmm. Because you can't do it on your own. And we weren't meant to be by ourselves. Like, although you're single, you're not alone. So mm-hmm. being in community is really good too.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you for sharing that. We talk a lot about boundaries, right? Like, and especially me as a therapist. I'm a mental health therapist, for those of you who do not know. And I am an advocate about, towards boundaries. I love to talk about boundaries. And I think a lot of times we talk about it on the surface. So give us some examples of what, setting boundaries are while dating, or just while being, or do you date like as a Christian single, like your personal experience? And if not, then just like what boundaries have you put in place?
So I have dated, and it has been interesting, I will say. You have some interesting individuals in the world, and then there are some learning areas that I learned about myself. But when it does come to the dating element, I think one boundary I have is being very transparent and being very honest. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's something that you really need to do in order to ensure you and that person are on the same page. Because a lot of times you have somebody who may be thinking one thing, and then you may be thinking another thing, and that's where you clash, because you have two differing opinions and thoughts and beliefs, and it's really because y'all never opened your mouth and said, where you're coming from. Mm-hmm. I also have a boundary with in terms of what we talk about. So for instance, I know in the past, sex was an issue for me. And so for me, I have to have boundaries in the conversation. So no, we're not going to be talking about, what we like to do and fantasizing and things like that, because that's not good for me. It's not good for my mind. And mm-hmm. so I'm not trying to trigger anything. Mm-hmm. Even boundaries in terms of where you go. It's one of those things where if you can't be around somebody late at night, mm-hmm. don't do it. Like, mm-hmm. Don't set yourself up for failure. You know yourself, you know what you're capable of doing. And, you don't want to put yourself in a compromising position where you could possibly forfeit a boundary that you initially put into place. Mm-hmm. And so those are just a couple, but I feel like that sometimes you learn the boundaries based off of certain situations you have. And so, mm-hmm. I know there are a lot of different types of boundaries, but I also recognize there are different types of people. And so what hinders one person may not hinder another person. Mm-hmm. So that's where you have to know yourself, self-awareness. Mm-hmm. If you aren't aware of yourself, then it will be very hard for you to place boundaries on something and to maintain the boundaries.
Yeah. If this makes you uncomfortable, let me know, and then we won't go into it. But I'm one of those people that go against the grain, even like at church, because I think that it's natural. What people don't talk about a lot in church is sex, and I don't know why, because it's natural, How you mentioned that's a boundary that you had or have while dating. Like, how soon do you go into talking about like your off limits about talking about those fantasies or what turns you on and things like that. And then how does that conversation go? Like, what does that even look like for you?
Well, I know I'm very straightforward. So, so even though, I have a boundary, like, I think because of the environment I grew in, the types of things I hear, they don't immediately make me react in a way that some people would. But I'm very straightforward. So for instance, if someone mentions something that I'm not comfortable about, I'm going to let it be known. And it's up to them if they accept it or not. I do recognize that it's not for everybody, but rather than trying to change or rather than trying to test, push buttons and stuff like that, it's better to just simply either you make a decision you're going to go for or you're going to walk away from it. I feel like in terms of sexual pleasures and stuff like that, if you're just dating and you're not in a serious committed relationship and you're not engaged, about to be married, it's irrelevant, because the reality is if you're abstinent, the goal is to have sex when you're married. And so it's like, why feed that in your mind with someone who you really aren't sure that you're spending the rest of your life with? Because ultimately then you'll make that an expectation, and so you'll go around dating all these people trying to get them to match what you envision sex should look like. And so that's why I'm very hesitant about having those conversations early on, because I feel like that's something that I need to have with my fiance.
I get you. Tell me, what was I about to ask you? Because when you were talking, the importance, the importance of abstinence. And there's people who don't identify as being Christian who practice abstinence. But tell me the importance of abstinence for you. Like, how do you see abstinence? Why is it important? What is it? And all of that good stuff.
So with abstinence, I do recognize that when you sleep with someone, you take a part of that person. And so that emotional connection is very strong. It's enhanced when you add the physical portion. There are times you can sleep with someone before you ever really get to know them, and you feel like you're just clung to them. And so it makes it hard to really connect with other people when you've had sex with someone. And so by being abstinent, my mind is really clear. I'm actually investing more in understanding who that person is, listening to them, really processing in a better way, because your mind gets foggy when you're having sex. Things are really clouded and your judgment is clouded, and you let a lot of things pass because in your mind you're thinking, oh, well, we can have sex and make up and everything will be good. But the reality is you're not dealing with issues that need to be confronted before you actually say I do at the altar.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't agree with it. And I always say teach their own. And more than just, things that I needed to do for me. I've shared this briefly before to a lot of my followers. Me and my husband, we had committed to waiting until we got married. And there's a lot of things beneath it. People don't know. Some people don't know, but some people do know. Like he's a preacher, and so he, there's a lifestyle that. And then I'm also just, I'm a Christian, and I solely have a good relationship with God, to where I said that I was going to give my body and my life to him because of what I know that I've endured or what I've experienced in the past. And so I personally, that was a personal choice for me, even before I even met him. And all of my friends know this. I even had a ring, bought myself a ring, a purity ring. But because of the relationships that I was in the beginning, just growing up, I know the soul tie that is connected to people, and when you're having sex with people, and I knew that was something that clouded me. And I can't speak for anybody else, but I know how that impacted me. And I said that I was going to allow myself. I wasn't going to allow myself to keep getting tripped up over the same old things when I know what's happening. And so I made that commitment to God, and I've made that commitment quite a few times before, and then when I finally got serious about it, like I said, before I even met my husband, I had to really say, this is what it is. And the irony is that I got very serious, to the point to where I was like, you know what? you know what, God, if you don't want me to be with anybody for the rest of my life, whatever, it is what it is. I just want to grow a relationship with you. And it's funny, some people know this story, but the very next day, a mutual friend had reached out to me and was like, hey, such and such want to talk to you. They saw your picture. And I was like, yeah, no. And that night before, I had renounced everybody that I had sex with in my entire life. And I said, you know what? I want to be cleansed of this. I don't want this to cloud me. And again, that next day, it was a Sunday morning. This person reached out to me and was like, hey, such and such want to talk to you. Like they find you attractive. They saw your picture. And I was like, no, no, that's too soon for one. It's my husband now. So, and I eventually gave in and was like, you know what? Like, God didn't say I have to be a nun. Like, I don't have, like, I can still like see what this person is about. And I went to go check him out on Facebook, see what his pictures was looking like. Then we started exchanging conversation and messages. I always tell people, like, he slid into my DMs. And then we started talking on the phone. And then from that, it was history. But I knew what I needed to do for me. Like, I knew what I needed to do to make sure that I was at peace and that I was doing things, because sex did cloud me. I was that person that needed to be in a relationship, or I was entertaining somebody. And I used that as, like, I prioritized them over my relationship with God, and that just wasn't good for me. So yeah, I always think that it's good to have these kind of conversations, because people don't talk about sex in church. Like, it's almost taboo. And I'm like, why? Like,
yeah, you're right.
It's normal. Like, it's normal. You don't have to get into it. You know, right. You don't have to. It's hard, especially if you've had it. But, you know, if you have God to help you through it, like, you can get through it. But it doesn't mean that you can't talk about it. Like, it's natural. It's quite natural. And if we keep like going away from the actual conversation, people aren't gonna ever really deal and know what's happening with them. So
right. And I mean, even with that, I also think it needs to be talked about, because even people who are abstinent don't know how to rebound, like if they do fall. And then you have another group of people who get all crazy because they don't know how to handle when they're aroused. Like, those are conversations that we need to have, because it's not, excuse me, it's not one of those things where, oh, if you're aroused then you've sinned. Like, arousal is not a sin. Like, it's our human body, it's our makeup, that's who we are. It is the response to it that's important. So it's like, when you are aroused, what do? Are you going to look at porn? Are you calling somebody up so you can have sex with them? Are you masturbating? Like, those are the things that we need to make sure you don't cross that line to. And then you have so many people in the world, you know, they're telling you how to deal with your feelings and stuff. And the reality is, the world shouldn't be telling you. Like, we in the church, we should help people understand that process and understand that they are not condemned to hell because they were horny. Like, that's just something we need to have a conversation about. And so it's just one of those things where, like you said, it's not talked about. And then we need to show grace. I think a lot of times people aren't showing themselves grace because of the simple fact that they don't understand it's a process. Like, for some people, it can be immediate. Like, I do not denounce the fact that God can do immediate deliverance, but typically it's a process. And so it's like, if you do slip up, do you have somebody you can call and pray with? You know, do you understand what it means to be able to go to Christ as your Father and pray, ask for forgiveness, ask for his help, because we can't do it on our own. It's not something my human nature wants to do. My flesh
ain't strong enough.
Something else. So we need to be okay with reaching out. Like, I have my close friends where it's like, when I'm struggling, I'm calling them. I'm like, hey, sis, we got to pray for me, cover me, you know, because it's getting tough out here. And so it's being okay with having those conversations. But I recognize that in the church, you have a lot of people who like to present themselves in a way that is not truly authentic to the reality of what we live in. And so it's hurting more Christian singles, because you have so many singles, they don't know where to turn. They're
Mm-hmm.
like, there's all this stuff happening and they don't understand who they can truly talk to because they're afraid people are going to judge them, condemn them, or
Yep.
say, you're going to hell, which is not true.
Right.
There just needs to be a healthier message that comes forth when it comes to that topic.
I absolutely agree. To the max. I wish that they talked more about it. I am a very vocal person, especially when I feel like things aren't being talked about. And like you said, it shouldn't come from the world. It should come from the church. We should be able to educate and show these people, because you sitting here having these feelings, and it's just like, what's happening? And then you start feeling condemned because of what people are saying to you. You shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't be doing that. It's like, I can't control how I'm feeling,
Mm-hmm.
So these conversations are very healthy to have. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We are talking about Christian singles, being single while you're a Christian, all that good stuff. I've had my experience with it. I was single for 3 years before I got into a relationship with my now husband. And these are things that I've experienced, personally. My hopes is for us to have these type of conversations so that people don't feel alone or feel alienated because, certain things are kind of taboo just based off of what we've been taught. And like I said, I've grown up in church my whole life, but there's just certain things that I do not subscribe to, just because I'm not a religious person by no means. I do believe that, that God he's evolving us all. His intentions are to evolve us all. And then for us to be able to live out his will and whatever that looks like. But before we can identify what that is, we need to understand like what our calling is, like what our purpose is in this earth. So we have Dr. Evans here sharing some good stuff. I'm glad that you're here talking about this. Welcome again, everybody that's joining. One final question. I usually try to keep these lives 30 minutes. Unless I know we're already at the 30-minute mark. So I just have one more question, and then I'll let you talk about your book, and then we'll go ahead and head off. We all know that dating experiences are different amongst everybody. Everybody have different types of dating experiences. What do you think are some cautionary principles that all could benefit from?
I would definitely say a lack of transparency in communication. If you recognize that you're the one always giving information, but they're not willing to offer anything, then that's a huge red flag.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the red flag term, everybody's using it, but that to me is something that you just need to be cautious about.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who lack of consistency.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm really big about consistency, and unfortunately everybody is not functioning like that. But with consistency, communication. So it's like, if you know you're the type of person that does not respond well, or you don't communicate consistently, and it's an area of growth, be able to communicate that. And so when you have personalities that are fixed, they don't want to change. They believe they are it. They will never have to grow. They're not teachable. Run, because you do not want to be with somebody who is not teachable from a Christian perspective. If you know somebody who's not repentant, I pay attention to things like when I'm around people in general. Like, if you make a mistake, if you can't apologize or you can't say, man, I messed up, I need to change this.
Ooh, girl.
Then that's a huge red flag for me.
Huge. You hear me? I can't stand that.
I mean, because everybody else sees it but them, and you're like, okay, this is a problem. And so just those main things, because I feel like those makeups, and then those things are often cultivated in how you handle your everyday relationships. Mm-hmm. And so even with that, like, I tell singles, like, you get cultivated in your singleness. Mm-hmm. So you may see marriage as a prize or whatever, even though it's not a prize. But those interactions, the way you communicate, the way you learn to forgive, the way you learn to show grace, the way you learn to love unconditionally, if you're not doing it first with the people around you, and yourself, you're going to have a hard time doing it with the spouse. So, you know, I always try to shift that perspective back to singles, because a lot of times singles think it's just, oh, you get married and you just become this new person. Like, no, like your whole life has prepared you for this moment. Yes. And then that portion will prepare you for whatever God needs to do with you next. Yes. So it all works together. So understand that how you treat people, how you function with people, how you communicate with people, how your habits, guess what? They're important to when you make it to that stage, if that's God's will for your life.
Absolutely. I've written a list. I've told this, not the last week, but the week before, I told people that I wrote a list. That was a common thing that me and the second speaker talked about. And that list was just something because a friend of mine came to me and said that God told her to pray for me and to fast for me, and told her to tell me to write down a list that I want to see how I want to see my family. And at first I was like, girl, I'm not doing that. Like, I was like, okay, you know, but I didn't do it. Then it just kept on just like sitting on me. And so I finally did it. And I just wrote the list, and it wasn't my superficial list. Like, gotta be 6'6" and I had this much money and blah, 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 blah. Although I did have some qualities where I wanted him to be taller than me. That's just always been a preference. And I want him to be pleasing to my eye. But there were certain things that I did ask for. And funny enough, like, he definitely hit the things that I prayed for on that list, or that I requested on that list. But even though he checked all the boxes, we are still two different people. And when we came together in a relationship and then even married, we had to learn how to coexist with one another. So I always tell people, marriage is not the goal. Like, staying married is the goal. And that comes with the work that you've learned how to, how to coexist with this person, or learn your areas of improvements and he learning his, and, all of these different things that you need to do individually, so that when you guys come together, you're not beating up each other. So yeah. Thank you, girl. Thank you so much for sharing that. Tell us a little bit about your book and where they can get it from.
Okay, so my book, Dear Singles, and you probably see it, Dear Singles Live. It is about living intentionally, victoriously, and expectantly for all God desires to do in and through you. And so it is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble online, and most book outlets, even Target online has it. But it's a 11-day devotional. Most people have taken longer than 11 days because they want to process each day. But it really is a guide to kind of focus on the individual. So it's focusing on you as a single and helping you to kind of redirect your thoughts to building your relationship with God and understanding yourself better, and understanding the importance of, healing. So I talk about therapy because I go to therapy and I feel like it's advantageous. I feel like even when you do get married, you need therapy. And so even going through that process, just understanding its preferences. You can have a preference, but if it's not aligned to God's purpose, understanding that purpose should be greater than that preference. And, you shouldn't sit here, having a pity party because you're not seeing exactly what you want. And then understanding the importance of praying and fasting and being disciplined, and building those different skills that will help you just as an individual, just being a better Christian and lover of Christ. Because ultimately, when you're pursuing Christ, that will help you to be able to function and to better serve whoever your spouse is, if that's what God has for you.
Yeah, I love it. So guys, if you are interested, please go ahead. I'm sure you can go on her website. Do you have a link on your bio,
Yeah, you can go to my website and it'll send you to where I have my books and whatnot. So you can just click the link. If you have personal questions, you can DM me. Have no problem with that as well.
Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for sharing, Ashlei. I really enjoyed this conversation. It's definitely something that's needed. I will share this live on my feed. And then, of course, after every live, I do like a recap. So I'll have the recap between tomorrow and Thursday. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you guys for joining so much. I am Brittany, also known as BC Speaks. I will see y'all next time.
Bye. Thank you.